Warning. The following episode contains subject matter and scenes that some viewers may find upsetting, disturbing, or unnerving. Please note, viewer discretion is advised at all times. Sit back and enjoy.
I'm such a magnificent guy. I'm beautiful. You can't deny that. I'm civilized, intelligent, sophisticated. I have a sense of style. And yet you girls don't see it.
Developments after that shooting rampage in California. More bodies after his shooting spree in the streets. A community still in shock tonight. Thousands gathering at a park, candles in hand, holding a tearful vigil for the dead and the injured.
The first images of the terrifying moments in this college town with a gunman on a rampage. Students seen ducking for cover in this surveillance video from the IV Deli Mart as bullets rip through the store's windows.
This world, it's so twisted. You denied me a happy life. And in turn, I will deny all of you life. I will punish all of you for it. You will finally see that I am, in truth, the superior one. The true alpha male.
Hello and welcome back to another I Could Murder a Podcast, Series 3, Episode number 9. I'm Tom Norris and I'm joined by the man in the swamp. It is Ben Carter.
Swamp Man by name, Swamp Man by nature. It's great to be here. I'm excited for this week's case.
I like that. I like the energy, Ben.
Thank you so much. Let's see how long it lasts.
Before we start, guys, don't forget to give us a little sub so you can see when the new videos come out. And if you enjoyed the content, give us a like. And if you have any questions whatsoever or any case recommendations, give us a little comment.
Yeah, or observations. We love observations. Scrupulous observations. They're my favourite. So keep them coming, please. I'll respond to all of them.
Is that because you said the word wrong?
Scrupulous. I said it how it, I pronounced it how it looks. And
like Jim Carrey and Will, what was it?
Pharrell?
Pharrell, yeah. You say things differently, and that's what people sometimes listen to us just to see what you say and how you say it, and I think that's great.
Yep. It's the how not to do or how not to say.
I think it's fascinating. As well, we have socials, Instagram, Twitter and Facebook at Could Murder a Pod, where we post regular content about the cases we're going to cover and also facts and little details about different cases.
Yeah, and a big thank you to all the new listeners, all the new subscribers, all the new people watching on YouTube. We really appreciate it. And if you've binged everything that's there to be binged, why not consider heading over to patreon.com/Could Murder a Pod for a bucket load of extra content.
And Ben, quickly, can you just reel off some cases we've covered on there?
Oh, goodness me. Purple Aki, The Mystery of D.B. Cooper, the S21 Genocide School. There's a little bit of everything. We do requests as well. So, yeah.
So, yeah, why not head over there? We really appreciate it. And if you want to support us in another way, we have a merch store. We've got hats, we've got mugs, we've got totes, and we've got a bundle. So if you're interested in that, why not head over there? We appreciate any support.
We may have shot ourselves in the foot with the bundle, but we don't care. So,
if feet aren't made for shooting.
So today we are going into the case of Elliot Rodger, and this particular one has been very intriguing from the off because the more I learned about it or the more I uncovered, the more I then wanted to know, if that makes sense. And it's just a lot of anger and hatred initially towards him. Tried to see it from both sides, couldn't. Went back to the anger and hate.
Yes, the anger and hatred remained.
Yeah,
make that very clear.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no sympathy here. So if you're looking for sympathy in this week's episode, skip the video because you're not going to find it.
You dug your own grave, you got out of the grave, and you went straight back in there. The fascinating one about this case, Ben, I think, is it's a real sign of a kind of a modern day example of a mass shooting. Obviously with filming himself, talking to camera. There's just so much more to kind of dissect rather than, some of the cases in the past where there might be a letter or an account from someone else. This is actually evidence where he's talking to camera. He's saying exactly how he feels. There's a manifesto, 141-page manifesto he's written. There's a lot to kind of dissect, to go into. Obviously, this is an hour-ish long episode, so we can't go into every avenue, but that we're going to be going through this and giving our thoughts and running through the timeline. Yeah,
and as Tom said, he left a massive social media footprint for us to kind of inspect, which we're going to. But the childhood is fascinating. I mean, as I said, the more we learned, the more we were fascinated by it. And it's exactly as Tom said. We've covered some serial killers. We've covered some quite spooky characters at the same time. If you consider Ed Gein.
Yeah, Ed Gein's a spooky guy. I'll give you that.
Fritzl.
Yep, still, very spooky.
But the modern day equivalent, and
Catherine Knight, a spookette.
So he's scary, but in a very different way. And I think it's the realism of it all that it just hits home hard in this case. So yeah, we're going to go through it all. Excited to cover this one. So if you're not familiar with the case, who was Elliot Rodger? Well, good question. Elliot Rodger.
You're congratulating yourself.
Elliot Oliver Robertson Rodger was born in London, England on July the 24th, 1991. His parents were British filmmaker Peter Rodger, who was mostly known for his second unit director role in The Hunger Games.
So yeah, he moved around in those kind of circles. He was in the film biz, which Elliot will go on to say, he's recorded and he's quite theatric with certain things.
Yeah.
But he grew up in a household where it was, a very well-to-do family.
Yeah, absolutely.
His mother, Lee Chin, was a Malaysian-born nurse who had worked as a unit nurse on the set of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So again, in the kind of film industry. His mother stayed at home whilst his dad was kind of trying to become a director. When his mum did decide to rejoin the workforce, his grandma, who he called Ama, moved in with them and took care of him. And they became very close.
So we're going to reference the manifesto quite heavily, but throughout that he references his mother. And at one point he said that she also dated George Lucas. Elliot also had one younger sister, and that was Georgia Rodger. So Rodger would spend the first 5 years of his life in the UK. He apparently had very fond memories of his childhood in Sussex, but he had also developed a bit of a hatred about how strict the schools were, and that during lunchtime he said he felt bullied as he didn't like football or soccer, and he was always forced to be the goalkeeper.
He lived in a house called the Old Rectory, and he did have he always had fond memories of there. He said, the memories I have of this period are only memories of happiness and bliss. So yeah, he very much kind of yearned for those days as he grew older.
So the family later immigrated and settled in Los Angeles, California, where Peter would continue to work as a film director and commercial director, and Lee Chin would spend time between raising the family and also working in the film industry as well.
So 2 years after they made the big move, when Elliot was just 7 years old, Peter and Lee Chin divorced. A year later, Peter remarried, this time to Soumaya Akaboon, a Moroccan actress who had appeared in the Hollywood blockbuster Green Zone.
I'd also heard that she was a regular in the French version of Real Housewives, which was also produced in Los Angeles.
Even though Rodger would think back of the UK and he'd have fond memories, he still had a tough time in school, fitting in. And at the age of 8, he was seeing a therapist.
Yeah, and during this time as well, very early years, he was placed into a Catholic all-boys school, and this is quite sad. At one point, he was really struggling to make friends. They would often bully him because he was fairly small, and at one point, he fell asleep at the desk, and his fellow students taped his head to the desk while he was asleep.
Yeah, it's quite the prank. I would have thought the noise of tape.
Yeah.
Would have woke me up. The school he attended was Crispy Carmelite High School. Carmelite sounds like a good donut.
Yeah, and
you go nuts.
Yeah, I go nuts for donuts.
I wasn't even. Yeah, I was thinking. That's what I said.
But that doesn't sound like the type of place any bullying could take place within. That's too nice sounding.
And according to Rodger in 2012, he said the one friend he had in the whole wide world who truly understood him said he didn't want to be friends with him anymore without offering a reason. And this would really obviously it would upset any kid if you have one friend and, if...
Like a breakup.
Yeah, essentially. I think, Elliot was getting picked on and they wanted to move away from him just to about a boy.
Yeah.
That scene when outside, we can't hang out with you anymore because we get bullied as well, which is sad. But
yeah. Then he turns around and walks off, and he's got a backpack full of masking tape.
He was diagnosed with pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, and autism spectrum disorder in 2007, but this diagnosis was later retracted.
So at the age of 8, he's obviously seeing various therapists and counsellors, receiving various treatment. He's having a very hard time at school. He can't stand as well his father's new partner. He's said to have despised her all the way through to his final days. And there's no real joy in his life for an 8-year-old. It doesn't paint a pretty picture. Yeah,
he later wrote that he cried by himself at school every day, and that was by the 9th grade. Yeah, I mean, that obviously paints a very dim view. The thing with Elliot Rodger, I think most people would agree if they've seen the videos of him, and like we're going to go into, a lot of the times he would use a certain language it would be slightly over the top in terms of the description, and it seemed very dramatic and theatrical. So, I mean, crying himself every day, you could possibly look at that and think that's slightly an exaggeration, but the way he would talk about people going forward, he wouldn't just, I didn't really get on with my stepmom. It was, I detested her. It's always kind of to the 10th degree.
So at this time, Peter and Lee Chin would describe their son as a constant enigma. They were offering him support, but it has been argued he didn't receive that support directly from his family, and they would very much kind of, palm him off to the professionals at the time.
Yeah, I did see an interview with his dad, and he said, as a kid, he was very loving and very, he's full of laughter. So at times he'd laugh so much that he'd worried he would choke. It's like he seemed to be a very kind of joyful boy. But then, the move over to LA, as I said, he seems to really kind of hark back to one, the UK life. Everything was happy. I guess that's probably why he associates Lee Chin with happier times and his stepmom with America and kind of the harder times.
There's one particular picture that stays with me, and that is of Peter Rodger laying in a hammock with very young Elliot on his lap, and they just look like the happiest people on earth. It's a very nice kind of father and son image. But that all disappears very quickly as he makes his way into his teenage years. He would move from the Catholic boarding school into a public school environment, which of course was very eye-opening to Elliot. He was said to have snubbed various offers of friendship because he felt that the people there were beneath him.
Yeah, there's a lot of that throughout this case where he'll say, no one wanted to be my friend, or girls never looked at me. But it sometimes felt like people did actually extend, the olive branch and want to befriend him. And he was very kind of dismissive, or it comes across, he wasn't obviously very confident in front of people. His communication skills, which a lot of the family friends would say his communication skills were very off. He wasn't, he was very shy, very quiet. And in terms of social situations, he would kind of go into his shell. But then, his brain would be going at 100 miles an hour thinking about all these things and, being slightly paranoid about how people are acting around him. Mm-hmm. So, him snubbing friends was quite a common occurrence.
Yeah, and that was never kind of a face-to-face arrogance. He'd find the confidence more so on his own, like if he was writing or if he was kind of filming himself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, when he comes to life when he went to the camera by himself. And as you said, we're writing the manifesto. I think it's one of those things where you think maybe someone approaching you wanting to be friends, or a girl, it's sarcastic, it's a joke, they're only doing it to take the mick out of me, rather than this is a genuine attempt at friendship.
Yeah, he seems to have, from the boarding school days, developed a bit of a defense mechanism there. I don't know.
If his one best friend who knew him better than anyone just ditched him, then you're gonna have a bit of trust issues, and developing friendships is going to be hard.
During this time, he was described as a very lonely, isolated and introverted child. He was observed to be socially anxious and quite awkward with people. He often was attempted to have had various play dates and neighborhood children kind of around the house, but they would never take. Just very, very isolated individual. And when he did go around other people's houses to go on various play dates, he would just hide in the house and in the garden. Didn't want anything to do with anyone.
So a friend of the family, Dale Lorna, who was screenwriter for Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, and my cousin Vinny, said that he counselled Rodger on approaching women, but that Rodger did not follow the advice. Lorna also commented that when he met Rodger at 8 or 9, he said, I could see that there was something wrong with him. Looking back now, he strikes me as someone who was broken from the moment of conception.
Wow. So as Elliot is going into his teenage years, his parents, although remain viewing him as an enigma, claimed that he became a very, very good liar. And though he was potentially bullied at school, sometimes he would over-elaborate that or lie altogether about that to get other children into trouble. He was still seeing many therapists, many counsellors. He was moved between many schools as well. So during this time, Elliot would throw himself into the online world. He would play various video games, including World of Warcraft. But he also launched his own YouTube account, which was basically a vlog titled Elliot Rodger's Official Blog, through which he expressed loneliness and his fights against rejection.
So Elliot would briefly attend the Los Angeles Pierce College and Moore Park College before moving to Isla Vista in 2011. So his parents kind of thought moving to the sunshine, the beach, he might kind of find himself there and it's more of a happy place. And he attended Santa Barbara City College. Santa Barbara is one of my favourite places I've been to, I think.
Oh.
It's bloody lovely.
Yeah. Well, Isla Vista as well was said to be a very good place for young people and for students, a thriving nightlife, thriving community by the beach, on the ocean, and kind of the perfect place for him to kind of socialise.
Yeah. So Elliot being at Santa Barbara College, he's hit puberty now. He's seen lots of young couples around him. And, you know, he's wanting that for himself, but he's finding it very hard to find any attention.
As I've always said, a beautiful environment is the darkest hell if you have to experience it all alone. And sadly, I've been alone for a very long time. And my problem is girls. I don't know why you girls are so repulsed by me. I dress nice. I'm sophisticated. I'm magnificent. I have a nice car, a BMW. I'm polite. I'm the ultimate gentleman. Look at how fabulous I look.
Yeah, and the longer it goes on that he is viewing as being rejected or feeling rejected, the more he dwells on that, the more he lets that kind of fester within. But he's in an environment essentially where young people are thriving. It's a happy place to be. Yeah, he views himself very much as a me against the world environment.
Definitely, and with his blogs, this would they'd go on to develop. He'd be sitting there. Just the thought of a couple being happy and him not having the happiness would make him very angry. He would say, I remember one video where he's looking out at the sunset over the beach and he's like, this was a perfect view until that couple sat down there. And he looks at it in a very practical way where he looks at it as, I've got money, I've got a nice car, I've got expensive sunglasses, why haven't I got...
I'm drop dead gorgeous.
Yeah. He rates himself very highly and he doesn't understand how these things by themselves haven't led him to finding a partner. He, in his own kind of eyes, he's got a lot of love to give, but that's all he wants to do is to give that and receive that. And he's taken it as, he speaks very downwardly upon other people who have partners and who he sees with beautiful women. He calls them slobs. How can they have that and I can't?
Yeah, and I mean, that would kind of blend into Elliot's kind of different views on race as well. So he'd often speak down to seeing anyone of a different race being with a hot white blonde girl. So he would obviously show that deep down he was harboring very racist views.
And he comes from his mother's Malaysian and his father's Caucasian. So to kind of pull away from this, Ben. So this is the case which I think a lot of people would have heard of him being referred to as the king of the incels, or he's very much touted as the kind of poster boy of incels. And I think this case is probably what brought that actual word to my attention, and I didn't know anything about it previously. Should we go into a little bit now of what exactly being an incel consists of?
So we've got two options really. We can do the Urban Dictionary, or we can go for the actual definition.
Let's start with Urban Dictionary.
Okay, so an incel, the top definition from Urban Dictionary is a member of an online community called incels. They are typically self-delusional, egotistic, and pretending to be nice people. So they often blame others for his deprivation of sex or romantic relationships, often has stereotypes for other people. An incel is a person who is unable to find romantic partners and thinks he is deprived of sex by other guys called chads.
Okay, Ben, let's go for the not so light one.
So an incel is an involuntary celibate. They are defined as a member of an online community or subculture of young men who consider themselves unable to attract women sexually or romantically despite desiring this. They are typically associated with views that are hostile towards women and men who are sexually active. So again, in context of Elliot arriving in Santa Barbara, seeing this world around him, there's so much fury building up inside him at this point, and you can hear that and see that in his videos and writings.
Strangely, the worst place to put an incel in is a happy, nice environment where everyone, it's like, you think, oh, we'll bring him into this lovely place.
He's going to thrive.
He's going to thrive, but he's looking around, he's seen other happy people his age having exactly what he wants. He thinks there's no way that he can get that. And it's really festering. And as we say, his videos would go on to escalate with him kind of getting more and more angry about it. He views himself as a supreme gentleman. Also, it's worth noting, he was prescribed risperidone, but refused to take it, stating, after researching this medication, I found that it was absolutely the wrong thing for me to take. So basically, risperidone is an atypical antipsychotic used to treat schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. So he thought it best of his judgment to not take that and just...
Yeah, I don't need it. I'm fine.
So as the videos would progress and he get more and more animated and more condemning of these Chads and Stacys, as it's referred to, not, paying him any interest, he would go on to, he threw a coffee on a couple he was jealous of, and he splashed coffee at two girls for not smiling at him. In 2012, Rodger used a super soaker filled with orange juice to spray a group playing kickball at Gersh Park. So he is actively, even though he is very shy, and he is actually doing physical things to show his distaste towards people having fun.
Elliot, now aged 20, is as unhappy and angry as he has ever been before in his life. His real life, obviously, is full of, in his view, torment and torture. But he's immersing himself into various forums and websites and blogs and video games. So he's basically semi-immersed now into this virtual world wherein he meets other people that maybe have also got incel traits or incel views.
Yeah, he's put himself in an echo chamber where people have the same mindset, really, haven't they? So they kind of goad each other a little bit in regards to that. But he will go into it, but even in those places, people will look at him as being a bit extreme with the way he was being it.
Yeah.
So I'm an incel, mate, but you are... I mean, come on. So as we always do, we're going to go into a timeline now and go through exactly what would lead up to and what would happen on that night.
So June 2011, Rodger now decides he's going to take fairly drastic action. He writes in his manifesto, "It was only when I first moved to Santa Barbara that I started considering the possibility of having to carry out a violent act of revenge as the final solution to dealing with all the injustices I've had to face at the hands of women and society."
Yeah, that's it. Even in his language, is the word injustice and things like that. It's always very theatrical and very dramatic. July 2011, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, Rodger observes a couple kissing in the line at Starbucks. He follows them outside to their car, yells at them, and splashes the coffee all over them. Rodger wrote about this incident, "I had never struck back at my enemies before, and I felt a small sense of spiteful gratification for doing so."
Struck back?
Yeah, that's the thing. He's at this age now where he's thinking any kind of people kissing is a spite at him.
August 2011, Rodger is paired with two roommates in his Isla Vista apartment. Almost immediately, he gets into an argument with the men. According to Rodger, the argument stemmed from the men teasing him about his virginity. So at this point, he's 20. After almost getting into a physical fight, Rodger is able to transfer to a different apartment after he complains about the two men.
In January 2012, so Rodger finds out his new roommate has a girl in his room. After the girl leaves, Rodger confronts his roommate, telling him that he is foolish to feel proud about having an ugly whore in his room. Rodger would also call police on his roommate for stealing his candles. Elliot called the police and his housemate was arrested and charged with petty theft.
Yeah.
And he pled guilty to stealing the candles. He had to pay it back and replace the candles.
Imagine that. So Hong pled guilty to the theft, first of all. It was a petty theft. But then decides, okay, well, and they just get on. They move back in together and that's that. But candles, he calls the police over candles. In the spring of 2012, Rodger now becomes obsessed with winning the Mega Millions lottery. So basically, despite coming from fairly affluent parents and been, the son of a Hollywood director, he still feels that is not enough. I mean, in his manifesto, he's constantly berating his mother for not remarrying into wealth and not taking up George Lucas, I guess. But he's very much focused on winning the Mega Millions. So to the point where he will continually drive across state to Arizona, which is a 4-hour drive, to play that particular state's Mega Millions lottery. During this time, he's become obsessed with the game, believing that money and wealth will be the end of his problems. On September 11th, 2012, he doesn't win the lottery. He rages. He drives hundreds of miles to Arizona, where he then smashes his laptop in an act of rage.
Yeah, so he was spending lots and lots of money on this. And as we said, he's very materialistic with his views. He thinks having a BMW should mean he should have the hottest girl on his arm. So the thought is, okay, well, if a Beamer isn't doing it, let's get a bloody Maserati in here. But he didn't. He didn't go on to win that, and that would lead him to be very angry indeed. So Elliot would go on to say about winning the lottery, he'd say, "I saw winning the lottery as the only way out. I knew I was always destined for great things. This must be it. I was destined to be the winner of the highest lottery jackpot in existence. I knew right then and there that this jackpot was meant for me. Who else deserves such a victory? I've been through so much rejection, suffering and injustice in my life, and this was to be my salvation. With my whole body filled with feverish hope, I spent $700 on lottery tickets for this drawing. As I spent this money, I imagined all the amazing sex I would have with a beautiful model girlfriend I would have once I became a man of wealth." So yeah, very interesting way of thinking.
Yeah, that sounds like the ramblings of one of the kids that were trying to find the golden ticket in Willy Wonka.
He has a very deluded way of thinking.
Yeah, and he's viewing that as his destiny.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't happen, obviously that just tips him further over the edge. So he made the trip from California to Arizona 4 separate times to buy Powerball tickets, and he didn't win the $130 million jackpot. So September the 12th, 2012, Rodger goes to the shooting range for the first time. So he destroyed his laptop in a tantrum for not winning the lottery. While waiting for that laptop to be replaced, he heads over to a shooting range in Oxnard, California.
So a few months afterwards, in December 2012, Rodger buys his first gun. So Rodger begins the first real planning stages for his day of retribution. He starts by purchasing his first handgun, a Glock 34 semi-automatic pistol. He buys it at Galota Gun Supply.
So spring 2013, Rodger buys his second gun. So he continued to try and play the lottery for a few more months, continues to lose, so he decides to focus instead on his day of retribution, which means he must purchase a second handgun, which is a Sig Sauer P226 for $1,100. And he was able to pay for that from his monthly allowance given to him by his parents. So he's getting over $1,000 in allowance from his parents.
But when you're spending 700 of it on tickets, you haven't got that much left, have you? So this is what he would come to say about kind of going to gun ranges. He said, "I walked into the range, rented a handgun from the ugly old redneck cashier, and started to practice shooting at paper targets. As I fired my first few rounds, I felt so sick to the stomach. I questioned my whole life, and I looked at the gun in front of me and asked myself, what am I doing here? How could things have led to this? I couldn't believe my life was actually turning out this way. There I was practicing shooting with real guns because I had a plan to carry out a massacre." So he'd go on to buy another gun as well after that. So he's in a very quick time, he's gone from a guy who, had no experience with shooting to owning 3 guns.
Yeah, so in his manifesto he claimed, "I needed to buy a third handgun just in case one of them jammed. I needed 2 working handguns at the same time, as that was how I planned to commit suicide, with 2 simultaneous shots to the head. I also needed to buy magazine clips and ammunition, as well as knives and carrying cases for my equipment."
Spring 2012, Rodger joins PUAHate.com, which is pickupartistshate.com. He describes the forum as a forum full of men who are starved of sex, just like me. He finds others who agree with his thoughts on the evilness and wickedness of women.
So Rodger writes in his manifesto that he tried to show this website to his parents to give them some sort of dose of reality as to why I am so miserable. They never understood why I'm so miserable. They have always had the delusion that everything is going well for me.
So spring 2013, Rodger decides to target Isla Vista for his day of retribution. So Rodger debated between choosing Santa Barbara City College or Isla Vista as his target. He ultimately chooses Isla Vista, in part because it was always flooded with young couples and good-looking popular kids walking around to their parties. So in his head, this is the hub of the Chads and Stacys. This is where the most beautiful people are hanging out, the people who live the lifestyle that he would want to live.
Yeah, those that are the happiest are those that have to suffer, and that's the decision he makes. So on July the 20th, 2013, Rodger gets into a bit of an altercation, which is pretty poignant. So just days before his 22nd birthday, Rodger decides to have one last-ditch effort to lose his virginity. He's very focused on doing it before the age of 22, quite literally. He gets drunk at a house party and walks to Del Playa Street, where groups of students are having drinks on a ledge. Initially, this was fueled by drunken confidence, so he makes his way up to the ledge and angrily confronts two white girls who are kind of drinking with an Asian man. So Rodger, first of all, mimics them and pantomimes shooting at the students on the ledge, which I don't know, is that trying to intimidate them, or is that just a drunken kind of... Eventually, Rodger tries to start, they're on a 10-foot ledge first of all. Rodger tries to start pushing them off the edge of this ledge, and he's, as we've mentioned, he's not the biggest guy. So quite quickly, after trying to push both girls off the ledge and failing, he then is confronted by the other male on the ledge who pushed Rodger off the ledge, and Rodger, as he's falling, feels a snap on his ankle.
This, on paper, if you were to take away everything, or the hindsight and what we know is going to happen,
Elliot Rodger wants to lose his virginity, but before 22, he has one night to do it.
it's very kind of...
One night and one broken ankle.
It's very kind of like teen movie.
Yeah.
But obviously it goes on to be. Yeah.
He fell off the ledge, snaps his ankle. Unable to walk, Rodger stumbles away from the party, only to realise that he'd left his Gucci sunglasses at the scene. He returns and drunkenly arrives at the wrong house, demanding his Gucci sunglasses. By Rodger's account, the students at this particular house start calling him names and they end up beating him up. Rodger throws a punch, but is only hit back. He says he is punched and kicked to the ground. The fight is broken up as adults intervene, and he stumbles away. And he returns at this point back to his dorms, and he spends the whole night venting to one of his roommates that he's going to get revenge on these people and kill them for how they treated him.
But yeah, they would have taken it, like we said before, he's very theatrical and over the top of how he explains things. So I'm sure the housemate would have been like, he just means, he's going to do nothing about it.
Yeah, that night couldn't have gone much worse for him.
No.
And then the next night, he's 22.
On his 22nd birthday, Rodger wakes up in pain. Hearing he may get in trouble for his role in the fight, he decides to concoct an altered story for the police. After arriving at hospital, Rodger provides his version of events to the police, claiming that the boys at the party deliberately pushed him off the ledge. Elliot told his father as well that story. When Peter came to pick him up, Elliot claimed he was a victim, bullied, called a horrible word, and beaten up. He told the police the same story, but they dropped the case after finding out Elliot might have been the aggressor. But his dad would go on to say he was such a good liar. He was such an incredible liar.
So Rodger then gets surgery on his ankle, which means that he has to spend a few weeks on crutches, and he also walks with a cane. That shouldn't make me laugh. Just imagine how angry he was already to then have to walk with a cane. It's perfect. So he decides basically as a result of this injury to move his day of retribution back a little bit to the spring of 2014.
Rodger adds his little brother to the hit list. Rodger has an argument with his stepmother, Sumaya. Sumaya tells him that his younger half-brother, Jazz, has an agent and will be in TV commercials. Rodger starts to see his little brother, who he writes about having bonded with, as the enemy. So he's basically looking at Jazz now as a Chad. Still, Rodger writes that...
Jazz.
Rodger writes that he cannot allow the young boy to surpass him at everything and to live the life he's always wanted. Elliot would say, if I can't live a pleasurable life, then neither will he. I will not let him put my legacy to shame, he says. In order to kill Jazz, Rodger also commits to also killing Sumaya. The only challenge for Rodger is finding a way to kill his brother and stepmother without being forced to kill his father. Rodger decides that the day of retribution must take place when his father is out of town. An interesting thing to note about all this is, I think it's around that time the film Chronicle was released. Have you seen that?
No.
Okay, so it's essentially about these boys who find this hole, go down this hole, and they get superpowers. And one of them, the way he delivers lines and kind of thing, it's quite similar to how Elliot is when he's, talking to the camera.
Okay.
Even the language of, I must seek revenge, I must do this. Basically, one of the people start using the powers for bad, essentially.
Oh, okay.
So they get these superpowers, and he turns into a
supervillain.
Yeah, supervillain, essentially. And I think throughout this, the way he words things and he says things, I will get them. He even says in his kind of videos, he does like evil laughs after he says stuff. His eyes aren't laughing, but he does it for the kind of effect. So I think he's seen this film and kind of, seeking revenge, evil laugh, and it's very villainous how he does it.
Yeah, and some of the statements he makes, it's then almost as if the laugh is completely disconnected because there's a couple seconds pause and then he's like, oh, I forgot to laugh.
You say if you look in his eyes, there's no joy in them whatsoever when he's laughing.
No.
You girls have never been attracted to me. I don't know why you girls aren't attracted to me, but I will punish you all for it. It's an injustice, a crime, because I don't know what you don't see in me. I'm the perfect guy. And yet you throw yourselves at all these obnoxious men instead of me, the supreme gentleman. I will punish all of you for it.
Rodger gets a BMW 3 Series coupe, so he gets a brand new car and takes pictures of this car and plasters them across his Facebook, which is also kind of smothered in selfies.
You did that with your McGann, didn't you?
I was like hugging the bonnet because it was my second ever car.
Early 2014, Rodger starts laying out his plans. So his plan has several phases. In his first phase, Rodger plans to kill his 2 housemates, first in order to secure his apartment as a personal torture and killing chamber. He then writes of luring people into the apartment with plans of knocking them out with a hammer, slitting their throats, and committing other horrific acts of violence. Rodger wrote that the first phase of his massacre plan would be to stab his 2 male roommates to death. As we mentioned earlier, he did buy knives as well as guns. So this is Elliot's words here. These were the biggest nerds I've ever seen, and they were both very ugly with annoying voices. That's one of our comments on YouTube, isn't it?
I was about to say that, yeah.
They were pleasant to live with. I would regret having to kill them, but due to their behaviour, I now had no regrets about such a prospect. In fact, I'd even enjoy stabbing them both to death while they slept. So after that, I will start luring people into my apartment, knock them out with a hammer, and slit their throats. I will torture some of the good-looking people before I kill them, assuming that the good-looking ones had the best sex of their lives. All of that pleasure they had in life, I will punish by bringing them pain and suffering. I've lived a life of pain and suffering, and it is time to bring that pain to people who actually deserve it. It's very elaborate plans that he's thinking he can kill his housemates, use that to lure people back, and keep killing people, thinking, it's very troubling reading.
For the second phase, Rodger plans to implement his war on women. His main target is the Alpha Phi women's fraternity at UCSB, which he deems as having the most beautiful girls. I think in one of his videos he refers to it as the hottest house. He plans to sneak into their house at 9 p.m, slaughtering and killing them with his guns and knives. After killing the women, Rodger writes that the final phase will be a showdown on the streets of Isla Vista, which that in itself is quite a statement. It's very kind of storyboardy, I can see at the moment. That's not the right.
That's a term, storyboardy.
Storyboard is a term. Yeah. Rodger plans to drive to Del Playa Drive and kill as many people as he can by either running them over with his car or shooting them. His final plan is to massacre everyone at the house where he was injured in July 2013. Predicting a melee, Rodger writes that he will then swallow Xanax and Vicodin and shoot himself in the head with the 2 aforementioned guns. Which is just to plan all of that, and he's planned it in great detail. It's horrifying, isn't it?
Planned in great detail, but we'll go on to how well that
was executed.
Yeah. He doesn't plan to upload his final video until minutes before the attack because he knows that would give him away. He uploads a video titled "Why Do Girls Hate Me So Much?" And then he goes on to upload other videos, which kind of, it seems to be as if he's kind of enjoying the final moments. Like he's looking through certain things, a nostalgic walk, walking through certain parks, a video of himself with his younger brother Jazz at the beach. Lots of 80s music is featured in the background as well.
He has a very interesting catalogue of music throughout these different vlogs that he was uploading, and the very easy comparison is the Patrick Bateman vibe. Obviously from American Psycho, played by Christian Bale.
So, as Ben's saying, the Patrick Bateman vibe, on one of the forums he was part of, someone commented saying, "Dude seriously channels Patrick Bateman, the film one, portrayed by Christian Bale. Narcissistic, superficial, intense, angry, supremely unfulfilled."
Yeah, there was another guy that responded to one of Rodger's posts in either PUA Hate or bodybuilding.com forums. Basically, Elliot had made a statement about an Indian guy in a Honda Civic with a blonde white woman, and how unfair that was and how unjust that was. And the guy basically responded by quoting that and putting the comment in before school shooter, essentially saying that, this guy's going to go on to commit a mass killing.
Yes, I'm sure the guy commented that in a jokey fashion, but wouldn't know how true it was.
So to go back to the similarities to American Psycho, Patrick Bateman in that movie is a stereotypical yuppie obsessed with money, status, and appearances. He also has a penchant for pop music, including the likes of Sting, Phil Collins, and Whitney Houston. And whoever did Higher Love, Steve Winwood, him as well.
So April 30th, 2014, the police visit Rodger. A week after uploading some of his videos to YouTube, police officers visit Rodger's apartment for a wellness check. So his mum, who saw Rodger's videos, who was concerned for his well-being, contacted the authorities. So after speaking with the police and explaining that the situation was a misunderstanding, Rodger was able to convince them that he was fine. He writes of this experience, "If they had demanded to search my room, that would have ended everything." In his room, Rodger had his weapons and writings laying out his plans, but the police didn't search his room, they left. So yeah, that's a huge moment there which could have stopped this whole thing. But as his dad said, he's a very good liar, but you would hope, the police would look into these things a bit more seriously.
Yeah, the police at the time just viewed him as very shy and timid and placid, and that there was no possible way, that he was any danger to himself or anyone else. He was just going through a bit of a rough time. And I think Rodger had even just explained the videos are just me expressing myself and my feelings, and that was how it was left. So,
but they didn't even watch the videos, did they?
No,
that's the thing. If the police even watched the videos and saw him saying things like, "I'm going to get justice," and all that, I'm sure they would have been looking into this in far more detail. I mean, I know the police haven't got unlimited amount of times, and usually they're quite understaffed, but those kind of things, if they, in hindsight, if they looked into those things, this could have all been prevented. Okay, so now we've reached May 23rd, 2014, which is the day of the attacks, Elliot Rodger's Retribution. So he'd go on to upload his final video onto YouTube, which YouTube have gone on to delete, which outlines his plan. It is Rodger's final video proclamation to the world. Because of the way YouTube organises timestamps, it isn't clear if the video was published before or after the massacre occurred. It's possible that the video could have been scheduled to be posted minutes after the shooting begins.
So Rodger began his attacks at his apartment on Seville Road, where 3 men were killed by numerous stab wounds to their upper bodies. Bloodstains later found in the building's hallway suggested that one or more of the victims had been attacked as they entered, and a bloody bath towel and paper towels in the bathroom suggest that Rodger had attempted to clean the hallway. So their positions suggested that each was killed separately as they entered the room. So basically he's going and doing exactly what he carried out, trapping people or tricking people to arrive and attacking them as they enter the room.
So 2 of the men killed there were roommates of Elliot Rodger. One was called George Chen, the other one was called Chae-Young Hong, also known as James Hong, and the third one was a friend of theirs and who was called Wei-Han Wang or David Wang, age 20. So yeah, they were killed by stab wounds.
Rodger immediately then heads over to his computer, where he then emails his manifesto to his parents, life coach, and others, and it is titled "My Twisted World: The Story of Elliot Rodger." Rodger's mother, upon receiving this email, immediately checks YouTube and looks into his account and watched the Elliot Rodger's Retribution video. She immediately then tries to contact Rodger's father, who was also watching the video, and they both immediately call 911 and make the Santa Barbara police aware.
Yeah, I heard an account of his father and mother both driving and hearing news reports about that particular car, knowing that was Elliot's car, kind of trying to drive as quickly as they can to try and see if they could defuse the situation. But obviously, by that stage, Elliot, his plan of retribution, as he liked to call it, was just about to That's a start.
9:30 that night. As laid out in his manifesto, Rodger starts at the Alpha Phi sorority house. Unable to get inside, he starts shooting girls standing outside, killing 2. He then drives to a deli on Del Playa Drive, gets out of his car and kills another young man by shooting into a supermarket that this young man was in. And you can see CCTV footage of this. It's absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, everyone's already taking cover and jumping down, and I remember hearing reports that he's laughing. As I said, playing the kind of very super villain kind of style. He's laughing, he's enjoying it, he's soaking in every moment of it.
Yeah, and you can see from the CCTV footage, you can see people kind of very quickly ducking down and covering, but then you see like massive fridges behind the glass just shattering and spraying everywhere. It's a terrible scene. He then gets back into his car and continues to drive at high rates of speed, shooting at random bystanders and trying to run people over with his car. So at this point now, it's not, he's not just targeting women. He's not just targeting chads and men that he's viewed as of having wronged him. He is literally going for anyone that gets in his way.
Well, like we said before, he had a very thought out idea, didn't he? And then he's tried to get into the one place he wanted to target, the hottest dorm in the world or whatever he called it, and he couldn't get in.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, luckily that lock on that door, where this would have saved a lot of lives because he had a lot of ammo, a lot of guns. And after that, he's gone, in my head, it's gone, oh shit, my plan, my day of retribution, what I'm going to go down in history for has all gone wrong. Yeah. He's in panic mode. He's like, I'm just going to try and take out as many people as possible. Yeah. And it completely changes their mode, which, as we said, he's spending months upon months festering, thinking all this through, had all these elaborate plans, his torture chamber and all this stuff.
I can imagine he would have been livid at that locked door.
Yeah, literally the lock on the door has completely ruined his plans.
So Rodger then, drives off from this deli, continues to try and hit people with his car and shoot at random. He also would fire multiple shots at a couple exiting a pizzeria and also a female cyclist. He drove south and shot at and missed another woman. I mean, his aim here already was fairly poor. He then made a U-turn and exchanged fire with chasing sheriff's deputy responding to the telephone report. So multiple calls now of a shooter on the loose. He also struck an additional 2 pedestrians whilst exchanging fire with the police. Rodger then shot and wounded 3 people. He also struck a skateboarder and 2 cyclists with his car. Now, there was an eyewitness that claimed the skateboarder was launched kind of 10-15 feet into the air. Rodger then exchanged further gunfire with 3 pursuing sheriff's deputies, and at that point he was shot in the hip. He then continues to be pursued by the police. He then heads west and strikes another cyclist and then crashes on the north sidewalk just east of the intersection of Del Playa and Camino Pescadero. And at 9:35, police found Rodger dead inside of his car from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to his head. In the car were 3 pistols, 2 knives, 6 empty 10-round magazines, and 548 rounds of unspent ammunition.
The 3 who died from gunshot wounds were Catherine Breen Cooper, 22, Christopher Ross Michaels Martinez, who was 20, and Veronica Elizabeth Weiss, who was 19. Cooper and Weiss were the women killed outside the Alpha Phi sorority house, while Michaels Martinez was the victim inside the Isla Vista Deli Mart. 14 other people were injured, 7 from gunshot wounds and 7 by blunt trauma sustained while Rodger struck them with his vehicle. This is a quote from his manifesto. All I ever wanted was to love women, and in turn to be loved by them back. Their behaviour towards me has only earned my hatred, and rightfully so. I am the true victim in all of this. I am the good guy. So since the shooting, the victim families have come together to fight for gun control. The relatives of Cooper, Michaels, Martinez and Weiss wrote, "Their deaths have shattered our lives." And, they've tried to pursue going forward, trying to actually, get some kind of reform.
There's a very, very powerful one. I believe it's Martinez's father, so we'll play that for you now.
Our son Christopher Martinez and 6 others are dead. Our family has a message for every parent out there. You don't think it'll happen to your child until it does. Chris was a really great kid. Ask anyone who knew him. His death has left our family lost and broken. Why did Chris die? Chris died because of craven, irresponsible politicians and the NRA. They talk about gun rights. What about Chris's right to live? When will this insanity stop? When will enough people say, stop this madness? We don't have to live like this. Too many have died. We should say to ourselves, not one more.
So following on from this, obviously it was kind of a very high profile case in regards to the area. You know, it seems to be whenever someone who comes from an affluent family, or, you know, his father being involved in the movies and whatnot, that's immediately going to put it into more of the mainstream media. So his father, you know, was pressed for an interview, and Barbara Walters, who
last week, the week before last.
Love Barbara Walters. She interviews everyone, and she's very, very good. So Barbara, she interviewed Peter, and he said, I don't understand it. I can't wrap my head around it. You know, he would say, you know, you could never predict this could happen.
Yeah, he kept referring him to as that boy or that child, this boy, this child.
He used an interesting analogy, which is it's a reverse nightmare.
Yes, yeah.
So rather than when you have a nightmare and you wake up and you're like, oh, thank God, he'll have a fairly pleasant dream and wake up and go, oh God, because it's, you know, he's waking up into the real thing, which is his nightmare. I know in another interview who was asked, you know, if you could do it all again, would you rather Elliot never existed? And he did, you know, take a while to answer, but I think he kind of was like, well, obviously with all these, he's you know, he's very obviously sorry for what his son's done, and he's like, there's nothing I can do to help the families, and every day he feels that remorse. But yeah, his father, you know, before he said Elliot was so far from evil, something happened to him. He was the most beautiful, kind sweetheart of a boy, and something happened to him. Thinking, you know, he's done everything he can for his son in his eyes. He's gotten great education. He's looked after him. He's provided money. You know, money can't, you know, raise a child. We know that, but he's done what he thinks is right by his child, and yeah. Did he know? I remember hearing the story when they were together on a trip away. Elliot was writing, and it turned out to be his manifesto, and he asked if he could see it, and he was like, no, you'll see it, and you'll see it soon enough.
And if you get the chance to read it, it is a fascinating read. He's very much, obviously read it in hindsight of what happened, but he does take very much kind of a villain role in it. I mean, it's written like a movie script, and his videos are as if it's, you know, a bad actor trying to play a villain, like we said. Made even creepier by the fact that he actually then carried out his ultimate act. But ultimately, yeah, very lonely, bitter, depressed, and vengeful individual. There's a lot of racism and homophobia and misogynistic views in the manifesto. So when he's asking the question, you know, why won't girls love me, or why don't girls want me, I think he's got to do a little bit of self-reflection.
Well, everyone knows Reddit can be quite an interesting place, but in November 2017, Reddit banned the discussion board Are Incels for promoting violence against women. On the subreddit, Rodger was often called Saint Elliot, as we said before, you know, being looked at as possibly the poster boy for that, for incels. There's been some attacks afterwards, which allegedly were inspired by Rodgers. One was allegedly Alec Misanan, the 25-year-old man accused of plowing a van onto a crowded Toronto sidewalk, killing 10 people and injuring at least 16 more. Minutes before the rampage, he wrote on a Facebook post referencing Rodger and so-called Chads and Stacys. So, yeah, I mean, the whole incel scene is a very worrying and distressing thing if you look into it.
So that was the case of Elliot Rodger and the Isla Vista Massacre.
It's a very interesting one. As we said, it's kind of different from a lot of ones because there's actual video footage of him saying what he's going to do, talking about it in forums. You kind of wonder if the police did watch the videos, if they did actually go into the flat and have a look around, if this could have been prevented. It's very easy for me to say this with the benefit of hindsight. Yeah, it's a very eye-opening case in terms of looking into the world of incels and whatnot.
Absolutely. And the more you read about it, the more you want to read, or at least that's what happened
with you, maybe. But I want to move away from that. So like we always like to do, we try to end it in some form of light relief if we can. We usually do lookalikes. I haven't got a lookalike, but the only thing I say was he looks like the kind of guy who would go to London purely for the M&M world. And his delivery, I've got a few references of how his kind of speech patterns and things like that. He reminds me of that guy, the really cringy guy he's sitting on that chair with curly hair. It says, "I love you more than there are grains of sand in the biggest desert." That guy, the awkward love guy.
I love you more than there are all the hairs on every cat that Mr. McHugh owns.
I also think his voice sounded a little bit like the emo song, Mood Apathetic.
Dear diary, mood apathetic. My life is spiraling downward.
And the way he talks about himself sounds kind of Dwight Schrute.
I have acted before. I was in a production of Oklahoma in the 7th grade. I played the part of Mutie the mailman. They had too many kids, so they made up roles like that. That was good.
So another thing, obviously, as I said there, My Twisted World, the story of Elliot Rodger manifesto is out there and available. One particular entry that was very eye-opening was he writes about being taunted as an average-looking manlet.
Manlet?
So manlet, first of all, how harsh is that? Very hard. I wouldn't like it if someone called me a manlet.
Okay, next intro. Saved.
He replies to it, and maybe I'll save this at my end just so I've got something to come back with. I am a drop-dead, gorgeous, fabulous, stylish, exotic gem among thousands of rocks. I am better looking than you, and you know it.
Yeah, Swampy, I agree with you. Fair play to you. So thank you for watching and listening to this week's episode. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe. If you're listening to it on an audio device, give us a little follow on there, and any kind of a rating you can do.
Yeah.
And a little comment on there is very much appreciated.
Massive help, yeah. And we really appreciate, obviously, the new listeners, the new viewers. Keep telling your friends about us, Swampy and...
Scully.
Swampy and Scully.
That sounds...
An awful episode of X-Files.
I like that. Swampy and Scully. That is brilliant.
So tell your friends about Swampy and Scully, your good friends Swampy and Scully over here. We really appreciate it. And if in the meantime, I mean, next week we're going to be covering an episode.
I'm really happy with that.
Oh, good. Good.
I love it.
I don't think it's going to catch on.
I'm already...
I'm going to burn this shit.
Your name tag on
Can't even rip it.
Your name tag at the wedding is going to say Swampy. And if you want any more content, we have plenty more over at our Patreon, and any support there is much appreciated. But or if you just want a little, support us in a different way, we have lots of things over at the store, which any support is very much appreciated.
Yeah, and as always, if you wanna drop us a message or a comment, hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter @CouldMurderAPod, or drop a nice little comment in the YouTube comment section. Make sure it's a nice little one though. Not anything about being a manlet or swampy.
And next week is a big week. It's the case you guys voted for. We put it on Instagram. We put it on our Twitter. People went over there and voted. Thank you very much for every vote in there. We really appreciated it. And we are probably going to take a steer from that for future episodes as well. But we have, the winner hasn't been announced, but the winner exists. If you want to count, you can figure it out yourself. But we're not going to announce it until next week.
Absolutely. So until then, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting us. And
like we always say,
keep doing
what you do.
Unless you're
wearing a swamp for a t-shirt. Sure. It depends what you're buttoned.
Break your
See ya.
Bye.